All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. It is Free For All Friday, so hope you will join me. 240-242-5646. Would love to talk to you. No guests, special guests like we had yesterday. We had a great guest, first time on, Dave Chapman, the Long Island Ice Watch man. I mean, he's not the only one, but he's part of that really important group there that's out there on Long Island helping protect residents who are under threat of deportation, under threat of kidnapping, under threat of seizure by ICE. And we so appreciate what Dave is doing, and also appreciate Dave coming on Halitics. Hopefully he'll come back again. He said he would. I'm going to hold him to it. 240-242-5646 if you want to join us. 240-242-5646. My wife told me a story, by the way. Speaking of wives, tomorrow is Valentine's Day. I'm going to talk about my wife in just a second, the story she told me. But yeah, don't forget it is Valentine's Day, and I'm going to make sure I go out and get a nice card, and hopefully we'll do something special tomorrow because I am a very lucky man indeed. With respect to the story, though, that my wife told me, it was not a happy one. It was not something that was upbeat. You might say, well, Hal, we're just talking about pets. We're just talking about dogs. But I think it kind of brings into focus just the little aspects of Trump's ICE cruelty, how it is just leading to just pain and suffering everywhere. Apparently, there's been an upsurge in the discovery of lost, abandoned dogs and cats, pets, whose owners, whose caretakers, whose parents, whose family, whatever term you want to use, whose people have been deported. And my wife told me a story of a little chihuahua that was found, I think it was in the street. I'm not really sure exactly where it had been abandoned, maybe in the home of a immigrant who had been kidnapped, seized, deported, to use whatever term you want. And of course, the dog was just left behind, was cold, scared, alone, hungry, because the person that it relied on to take care of it was gone, was just simply, and you can imagine how that owner felt knowing that their dog, their beloved family member, was left to the wolves, figuratively left to the wolves. This is just one little thing you think about. We all love our dogs, we all love our pets, our cats, and they're being left out to dry as well by these thugs, these armed thugs, these masked thugs in our streets. And I understand, look, I do not want the MAGA rank and file. I do not view you, and I know some of you certainly view me as the enemy. I don't view you as the enemy. We're going to talk about that. I have real problems when you support these policies that Trump embraces, but I have problems with the embrace by so many Democrats and some self-proclaimed progressives of the terrible politicians, the terrible leaders that the Democratic Party has had as well. But for me, and I think this is how Dave, our guest yesterday, sees it as well, is just that, I don't know if you even want to call it sadism, just we're going to get rid of you. You are not welcome here. We are pulling the welcome mat up completely. Seems so wrong-headed and so what I want. I won't say it's un-American. I mean, that's part of America for sure, but it's so contrary to what I want America to be, what I hope it could be. And I think that's why, Dave, I think he obviously feels the same way, and that's why he is doing what he's doing. There are many areas where we really have to fight evil. It seems to me this is one right in front of our doors, right outside our doorstep, rounding up people, deporting them. People I care about, I know. People who are good people seem not just indifferent, but to cheer this on. I just can't get that. I can't get behind that. It's very upsetting. 240-242-5646 would love to talk to you. 2646. So bunch of stories, free for all. We try to revisit stories we were looking at earlier in the week or sort of themes of Halitics. This is kind of a new one I got getting on the Silver Bulletin. That's Nate Silver, used to be, 538, all sorts of different places, kind of the numbers guy, the numbers guru, kind of I guess I'd call him a neo-lib to a degree, certainly not a progressive, certainly not a leftist. Although he did say, hey, he did come out and say, yeah, Bernie would have won, but that's what the numbers told him. Bernie would have won in 2016. I don't think that's really even an argument at this point. Trump said it. Trump said he would have won. Trump said he got how trade was destroying the Americans' working class, no question. And the anger that workers felt and continue to feel at the betrayal by Democrats was really weaponized by Trump against immigrants and against immigration policies. Can Democrats escape their Florida death spiral? I thought this was a really interesting article, and we hear a lot, or whatever, email alert from Silver. A lot of the numbers that we're hearing about, certainly the special elections have looked really good for Democrats, right? Even the ones they haven't won, such as outside Nashville, have resulted in a significant swing towards the Democratic candidates. And they won big in places like New Jersey, Virginia, where they expect to win, but they won by bigger margins, by, blowout margins. Even a race they probably would have lost in other years, the Attorney General's race, where the candidate had certainly sent out some very ill-advised tweets, and yet Democrats managed to win that race. So it does look, the mayor's race in New York, it would have been a Democrat no matter what, but Mamdani's victory with over 50% certainly signals a movement, a shift left, which I think probably redounds to Democrats' favor. But some of the numbers don't look so good. Florida is, I believe, the nation's third most populous state. It may be the second. It's California and then Florida, Texas. I think they jockey. I'm not sure which one is bigger than New York is the fourth. And it's a bad sign for Democrats that of those four states, Florida is growing the fastest. California and New York are either static in terms of population or slightly dropping in numbers. I think Texas is growing, but more slowly than Florida. So the two biggest Republican states are growing. The two biggest Democratic states are shrinking or remaining, or remaining where they were, which is bad because it's bad for the House if you don't want Republicans to have a majority, because they'll presumably pick up a seat or two in the next census, maybe more, just from those four states. 240-242-5646, like to talk to you. Yeah, so because, and what we have is the ping pong ball setup here, where you have two terrible parties with terrible leaders who do bad things to our country, leave us in worse places than they found them. And right now, with Trump in office, there's certainly a shift away from the Republicans. But we saw the same dynamic when Joe Biden was president. We saw a shift away from the Democrats, and we saw a shift away from the Republicans when Trump was president in his first term. And amazingly, Obama just Democrats hemorrhaged elected offices during Obama's presidency. And, I wonder about that because Obama had well over 50% of the vote. He had the most votes by percentage that we've seen in a long time. I think you have to go back to Reagan to get to a president who did as well in terms of how large his victories were. You have to go back to Reagan to find somebody who's a comp to Obama. And Obama turned, at least in 2008, red states blue. Ohio, Iowa come to mind. Those are states Democrats haven't come close to winning. I believe Obama won Florida in 2008. In fact, he did win Florida in 2008. Democrats don't have a snowball's chance in Palm Beach. Well, there could be snow in Palm Beach, I suppose. They don't have a snowball's chance in Key West. At this point, to win a statewide election in Florida would certainly appear. So we'll get into the reasons, therefore, but I just want to mention real quick why I think Obama did so poorly when it comes to the loss of votes, a loss of offices. I think there was so much disappointment. I don't think there was, I think most times people get elected and maybe there's fatigue with the other party. I think part of the W. Bush victory, people didn't gee, I love George W. Bush, or how, we can't wait to have a Bush Cheney ticket in the White House. I mean, it wasn't that at all. And he got fewer votes than Gore, but probably fewer votes in Florida than Gore. But, there was a sense that we'd had 8 years of Democrats in office with Clinton, and he was a sleazy guy, and the policies that he embraced, the neoliberalism, really didn't make life better for working class Americans. I mean, it was the economy grew. There was a boom cycle because of Silicon Valley at that point, but wages were stagnant. Clinton was embracing neoliberalism. NAFTA led to loss of millions and millions of jobs. So there was a real fatigue had set in with Democrats. And that's why I believe among other things, the Supreme Court and a lot of other factors. But the fact that the race was as close as it was largely because of Clinton fatigue, I believe. And that's what we saw in 92. You had Republican fatigue after 12 years of Republicans in office. Probably Trump's victory in 2016 was a Democratic fatigue, especially because you had a Hillary Clinton on the ballot who was very closely associated with the Obama White House, right? She'd been his Secretary of State. He had defeated her in 2008. He made it clear he thought she was the right successor to him. So the election of Trump over Hillary in 2016, again, other factors, she did get more votes. She won the popular vote compared to Trump. She didn't win the majority, but she won the popular vote compared to Trump. Lost the Electoral College. Obama fatigue, Democratic fatigue. So a lot of basically voters just saying, we gave those guys a chance and they screwed it up. So I guess we have to give the other guys a chance until they screw it up. In 2008, certainly there was Republican fatigue. Certainly we were in a bad situation, right? 2008 election came during the 2008 financial crisis. There was endless war under W, under Cheney, torture. And Americans were ready to turn the page on the Bush-Cheney years, on Republican misrule. Obama came in with 59 or 60. I think he had 60 Democratic votes. Although Joe Lieberman, he could not count. There were 58, plus there were two caucus Democrats in the Senate. Couldn't count on Joe Lieberman for sure. Couldn't really count on the Max Baucus, the Montana. And remember, both of them were dead set. There's not going to be a public option. That's not going to happen. They told Obama when it came to health care. But when Obama was elected, there was a tremendous amount of excitement. And it wasn't just the left. It wasn't just young people. It wasn't just people of color. He won, again, Iowa. He won Ohio. There was an optimism that he was going to fight for the heartland, fight for workers. He was an Illinois state senator and then an Illinois Congress member and then a senator. He was not a coastal guy, even though he grew up, in Hawaii, but he represented Middle America. And I remember the slow trickle of support away from him as there was this fight for Obamacare. It took up so much emotional energy, and in various ways, Obama, betrayed people slowly, but bailing out the big banks, telling the big bankers, "I'm protecting you from the mob." And the sense more and more of so many working people, poor people, struggling people, was he's really not fighting for us. I think that was just incredibly damaging to the party. It's people would say, "Well, that's ironic, Hal," or they would, they say that's ridiculous, Hal. Obama was the popular guy. Obama won re-election over Mitt Romney by big numbers. Mitt Romney, the guy famously who looked like the man who fired you, right? He had a choice in 2012 between two neoliberal Obama, neoliberalism on steroids, the Bain Capital guy, right? Private equity guy, Mitt Romney. So yeah, of course Obama won. He had the power of the incumbency and all that. He had gotten us out of Iraq at that point. It felt like he had. But in the end, the Obama presidency, towards the end of the presidency, there was a tremendous sense of what might have been. And I think that really played into the way Florida has become a hard right state. Why is it? Why is the Sunshine State, according to, and we can all see it. It's not like it's, you have to have some kind of 2010 vision to see it. Why has it collapsed in Florida? And there's a bunch of reasons that are given. The biggest reason, according to the Silver Bulletin, this guy's Eli McCown who wrote this. It is just simply the demographics of the state. There's a large Latino population, which is especially conservative. I mean, we know that Latinos, Hispanics tend to be more conservative on social issues than other voters. But the Latinos in Florida are especially conservative because there's a high percentage of Cubans, many of whom fled Castro. So these were elite Cubanos. They were affluent Cubanos, and they are not embracing of socialist policies, communista parties. I was called a communista when I was in law school. When I was on the Immigration Law Journal, there were a number of Cubans on that journal, Cuban Americans, and I think Cubans as well, maybe one or two students. Well, they wouldn't have been Cuban because of the Castro regime at that time, but maybe some had been born in Cuba, but they were definitely Cuban American regardless. And they didn't like it when I talked about the need for Medicare for all. That was not a popular policy among the Cuban Americans that I knew in law school. They did call me a communist for that. So you have a relatively sizable cohort of pretty dyed-in-the-wool Republican voters. Although say younger ones or may have moved to the left, they did remember some did vote for Obama. But bottom line is Florida is not a highly educated state in terms of the number of degrees. It's a blue-collar state to a significant degree. And you have a sizable percentage of Republican, voters because of their history. And that makes it very, very tough for Democrats. But there's other factors. The party there is particularly corrupt, particularly ineffective. A number of their leaders have been investigated legitimately for misappropriation of funds. There are sex scandals involving various Democrats. And then the Democrats that you think of when you think of Florida right now are not particularly savory people, right? Someone like a Debbie Wasserman Schultz. She's not somebody that jumps to mind when you think of good government, when you think of the people's politician, right? I mean, she represents an affluent Gulf Coast, not Gulf, Gold Coast, right? I think it's called the Gold Coast on the Atlantic side, Gold Coast at Bar Harbor, I think. So there are, significant problems with the FDP, as it's called, the Florida Democratic Party. They're not raising money. To the extent they raise money, they use it pretty much to elect or to keep reelecting the same tired establishment folks like the DWSs. So there's those factors. But another big problem for Florida, in my opinion, is just that the party itself is to the right on economic issues. It's not to the left. It's to the right of Floridians on economic issues. And this is true nationwide. So 2020, Florida voters pass a $15 minimum wage. Why isn't the Democratic Party in Florida branded with pro-labor policies? Why isn't that the first thing you think of when you think of the Democratic Party? And it isn't in Florida, not at all. I mean, again, the first person I think of is Debbie Wasserman Schultz. I think of very pro-Israel policies because there's a lot of Jewish Democrats, a disproportionate number of Jewish Democrats in Florida. Many have also voted Republican. What I don't think of is politicians who are right there in the middle of the state where the agricultural workers are, the folks who are living 5-10 miles from any coast. The real estate is incredibly valuable when you're right on the Florida coast. Once you move inland, it's not worth very much at all. That's where the poor people work, the working class people live, the poor people live. They may work on the coast. They may work in homes as domestic workers or at resorts, but they don't live on the ocean. They don't live on the Gulf Coast. And this has led to just a remarkable, bipolarity in the state where both parties pander to the coastal elites, but the Republicans also pander to the cultural prejudices and biases of the working class, of the religious voters there. And this is just killing the Democratic Party. The only way out of that mess is to champion Floridians, champion their economic rights. This is not something that the Florida Democrats are prepared to do. It's just too costly to them. They're elites too. They're rich too. They don't want to give up their privileges. I don't know how you get around this, right? How can we possibly cut through this? The interests of Democratic Party politicians are just directly antithetical in so many places, in so many ways, and especially in Florida, to the voters. That's how you lose. That's why you lose. That's why we lose. Unless we're prepared to abandon this party. And I think we need to do that. 240-242-5646. 240-242-5646. The spectacle of this administration covering up, slow walking, all the evidence of sexual corruption, of pedophilia, the involvement by many in the billionaire class with Jeffrey Epstein is truly loathsome. It's despicable. And it is part of the reason, we are seeing, I think, a shift to the Democrats. Not a huge shift. I think the last generic ballot I saw showed Democrats up only 4 points over Republicans. That's not so great. But I think if you'll see in the swing districts, Democrats are probably at at least at this point, going to overperform. This video, this is from Sam Cedar, right? Okay, so he does the Majority Report. So I give him the credit for it. Let's play this. This is Jayapal in the Congress trying, I think, to rake over the coals. Pam Bondi.
To the survivors in the room, if you are willing, please stand. And if you are willing, please raise your hands if you have still not been able to meet with this Department of Justice. Please know for the record that every single survivor has raised their hand. Attorney
right, so that looks bad, right? I mean, let me stop it right there. That looks bad for Pam Bondi. That looks bad for Trump. I mean, these are the people we should be centering. The victims of these elite predators, the billionaire predators, the Les Wexners, the Jeffrey Epsteins, the Chomskys, if he was there, I don't know, the Woody Allens, the Donald Trumps. Those are the people that are the villains in this piece. And these women with their hands up are the victims. And Pam Bondi hasn't met with them. Why hasn't she? It's a really good question.
Bondi, you apologized to the survivors in your opening statement for what they went through at the hands of Jeffrey Epstein. Will you turn to them now and apologize for what your Department of Justice has put them through with the absolutely unacceptable release of the Epstein files and their information?
I'm going to stop it there. Oh, well, that's all of it. Stop it anyway. I already stopped. We got a follow-up video, which I will share with you. When I first watched that, and by the way, thank you, Sam Cedar, for putting it on your show. And I, again, want to give you credit. I'm sure I could have found it somewhere else on the internet. It's all over the place. But I thought that was a pretty good job by Jayapal. I really did. I thought, well, she's kind of embarrassing Bondi in that moment. I'm going to play the follow-up, Bondi's response. After I saw Bondi's response, which I'll play for you, I really reconsidered. I thought it was good. It was effective to have the victims there. It was effective for them to raise their hands. What was, I believe, incredibly ineffective and a complete mistake, really, was to ask Bondi to apologize. What she should have done, and I want to tell you, this is 2020 hindsight, because in the moment when I first watched the video, I thought, oh, that's pretty good, Jayapal, you actually handle that pretty well. What she should have asked Bondi is, will you meet with them? When will you meet with them? How much time will you give them? Ask her those open-ended questions. Don't say, oh, apologize, right? Putting her on the spot, shaming her. Just say, I know you're really busy, right? Be the good cop. It's Attorney General's a huge job. But don't you think this is something you really need to make the time for? Will you be able to meet with these folks now? How much time can you give them? And I would even go on and say, look, they were teenagers, they were adolescents. They weren't adults when they were molested, when they were abused. What steps are you taking now to prevent this from ever happening again to others? How can we work together? I'm sure we can agree, can we not, Attorney General Bondi, that this should have never happened and it shouldn't have been allowed to happen. You know what? If you had asked the question that way, everyone would be on your side, Jayapal. And it would have really put Bondi on the spot, because this administration doesn't want to work with Democrats. They're not trying to solve problems. But you're presenting it in such a way that it would be very, very difficult for her. She would really have to struggle to respond to that in an effective manner. So will you meet with them? I know how busy you are, but don't you think this merits your first, attention? I think she'd have a lot of trouble with that question. Will you ask President Trump to meet with them? I mean, wouldn't that be a great question? Attorney General Bondi, will you speak to your boss and try to arrange for a meeting where you'll talk to these and he'll talk to these survivors and you'll work on how to protect them and women similarly situated in the future and ways to try to, provide some redress for their suffering. Wow, wouldn't that have been effective? I think so. Let's see what happened instead.
Congresswoman, you sat before Merrick Garland sat in this chair twice.
Attorney General
Twice.
Bondi.
No, okay.
So she immediately can pivot. She says, oh, you want an apology from me to well, what about Merrick Garland? It was a very, you need to apologize. And it immediately becomes a shouting match.
No, I'm going to reclaim my time because I asked you a specific question that I would like you to answer, which is, will you turn to the survivors? This is not about anybody that came before you. It is about you taking responsibility for your Department of Justice and the harm that it has done to the survivors who are standing right behind you and are waiting for you to turn to them and apologize for what your Department of Justice
So
has.
again, one of the things that I learned as a trial lawyer is you don't do all the talking. Now when you're cross-examining someone, and you've got them on the spot and the evidence is, you can limit their answers. She can't limit Bondi's answers. Bondi's in the end going to have more time to speak than Jayapal. And this so comes across as grandstanding, right? It's clear Jayapal is trying to humiliate her, embarrass her. Are you going to apologize for not meeting with them? I mean, it wasn't great. She should have met with them. Releasing some documents? If I were Pam Bondi, I would have said, you know what, you raise a good point, Congresswoman. We haven't been as, concerned. We haven't, in my Justice Department, sometimes I've lost sight of what matters most. And what matters most is the victims. And these women are victims. I said we apologize. I apologize for what they had to go through. But you know what? We could have handled this in my department more professionally. There have been areas where there have been lapses. So, ladies, I do apologize, and I do plan to meet with you. If she had said that, oh my gosh, Bondi would have totally owned Jayapal. But instead, she gets down the gutter with Jayapal, and they both just look ridiculous, and it's embarrassing, and it turns people off politics. People say, this isn't what I want. This isn't what I hope for my elected.
The questions the witness gets to answer in the way they want to answer.
So you heard what the chair said. The chair said, you can ask whatever questions you want, and the witness gets to answer however she wants. It's very different when you cross-examine a witness, a hostile witness, a defendant, what have you. You can limit them. Yes or no. Were you at the dentist's office between 5 and 5:15 on, September 9th? And, where there was the dentist was killed, so that you're trying to prove it. No, I wasn't there. Well, let me show you these records. It shows you had an appointment then. We subpoenaed this from your computer. This is your Google Calendar. It shows it right there, doesn't it? Yes, it does. Well, I asked you again, weren't you at the dentist? No, I had the appointment, I didn't go. I'm going to show you. And they say no. They don't give them a lot of time to answer. And you say, I'm going to show you this video. from the dentist's camera. Shows you at the dentist. So you can limit them. They can't filibuster. But in this case, Bondi can filibuster. She can answer it however she wants. And Jayapal immediately falls into this trap of this pissing contest, which in the end, Jayapal, I don't believe, can win.
Attorney General can
That's
respond.
not accurate, Mr. Chairman.
Because she doesn't
It is
like the
my
answer.
time.
So,
Mr. Chairman,
why
I have asked
didn't
a
she ask
question.
Merrick Garland this?
I am
twice
reclaiming
when he
my
sat
time.
And I'm going to just, why didn't she ask Merrick Garland? So again, always you have an opportunity to take the high road, take it. Jayapal could have said, you know what? Attorney General Bondi, you're absolutely right. We didn't hold our own accountable. We were wrong. We should have. We didn't. But you're in a position now where you can rectify that situation. Will you do it? We all feel dirtier based on that video, I think. It's not a pretty picture. No one should feel proud of American democracy when you see that kind of back and forth. They're arguing about the Epstein files. This guy, Noam Chomsky, very well-known professor, I think linguist. Was he at Boston College? MIT, right? And very left-wing. I think he talked about his book was Manufacturing Consent, how the media, rather than really telling us what we need to know to make decisions about policy, the media actually manufactures consent for pro-billionaire policies, for pro-war policy, for anti-worker policy. That was his book, and brilliant. But this guy was rubbing elbows with Epstein, he was part of his coterie, his entourage. And it's again, sordid. It's embarrassing for, I think for Chomsky's acolytes. They talk about this in the Vanguard. These are these two young guys who talk about their focus. The Vanguard's focus is podcasts, usually left of center podcasts. And they are big fans of Kyle Kulinski. They're big fans of Crystal Ball. They're not big fans of the Young Turks. So I want to play this clip where they're talking about Chris Hedges and his condemnation of his former friend, Noam Chomsky.
Noam, of all people, knows the predatory nature of the ruling class and the cruelty of capitalists, where the vulnerable, especially girls and women, are commodified as objects to be used and exploited. He was not fooled by Epstein. He was seduced. I'm
going to stop it. I want to play that again. This is, there's two guys, Gavin, I forget the other one, the one who's reading, I think is the guy with the longer hair is Gavin, I think. So he's reading this. I want to start it again. He starts with the word Noam, talking about Noam Chomsky. He's quoting Chris Hedges, who is harshly critical of Chomsky's relationship with Epstein and his involvement with Epstein's, billionaire entourage.
Noam, of all people, knows the predatory nature of the ruling class and the cruelty of capitalists, where the vulnerable, especially girls and women, are commodified as objects to be used and exploited. He was not fooled by Epstein. He was seduced. His association with Epstein is terrible and to many an unforgivable stain. It irreparably tarnishes his legacy. If there is a lesson here, it is this: the ruling class offers nothing without expecting something in return. The closer.
All right, so that's by Hedges, and I'm going to play more of that clip in a second. I'm going to get to the point that I found very dispiriting, the analysis where I think these guys get it wrong. But what Hedges said is 100% spot on, which is the ruling class, the elites, the capitalists at the top of the tree, not the small business owner. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of people who want to go after them too, but that's not who he's talking about. He's talking about the people with real power, real money. They're soulless. They're predatory. Chris Hedges says they're not people that being with renounce your credit in any way. It's just the opposite. Their dirt rubs off on you. That's what Chris Hedges is saying about Noam Chomsky. And that Noam Chomsky knew what Epstein was: a pimp, a child molester, a rapist. And yet, like so many others, Chomsky just didn't care, looked the other way. It's okay.
The you get to these vampires, the more you become enslaved. Our role is not to socialize with them. It is to destroy them. And that's so well put from Chris Hedges. It kind of
And I want to
reminds me, actually,
I'm going to stop there because we're going to get to how Gavin gets it wrong. But he says our role is to confront them. Our role is not to socialize with them. It is to destroy them. And who is he talking about? This is what's important to understand. Who is Hedges saying we have to destroy? The billionaire class, the capitalists. They're hangers-on. I don't know if Epstein was a legit billionaire. He might have been. He actually might have been a legit billionaire. That's who Hedges says we must destroy, not socialize with, not have drinks with, not make excuses for. Those are the people that we must destroy. And I agree with Hedges, 100%. Let's hear how Gavin gets it wrong.
what I said when Jenk started talking about how we need to get together and have a beer with these right wingers. I'm like, bro.
So he's saying, do you see how that morphs? What Gavin is saying, yeah, this is exactly what I said. This reminds me of when I was criticizing Cenk Uygur because he said we need to talk to MAGA and we need to figure out what makes them tick and we need to understand them. This is where Gavin gets it completely wrong. MAGA isn't Epstein. MAGA isn't billionaires. MAGA isn't the elites. Sure, some of them are being manipulated, or they are being manipulated in many cases by elites, people like a Steve Bannon, who I guess would call himself MAGA, but he's, at the top of the tree. And that's not really who Cenk was talking about meeting with. He wasn't saying have Charlie Kirk on your podcast the way Gavin Newsom did. He wasn't saying talk to Ben Shapiro, who I don't think would probably call himself MAGA, the way Ezra Klein from the New York Times does. Cenk is saying, talk to Republican voters. Talk to working class Republicans. Talk to Latinos who embrace Trump despite his cruel and inhumane immigration policies. Try to figure out what it is about the Democratic Party that has caused them to embrace someone like a Trump. What Cenk is saying is we need to build a movement of people who have similar interests, who are being exploited by the billionaires, whose lives are far less rich, far less complete, far less fulfilling because of this unjust system in which we live. And many of the victims of this system are people who are voting for Trump. And it's not necessarily because they're misguided. It's not because they're stupid. It's not because they're ignorant. It's not even because they're cruel, although I would look at some of Trump's policies and say they're very cruel. But I could say that about Kamala's too. What Cenk was saying is, if you want to take down the Epsteins, if you want to take down the Trumps, if you want to take down the Joe Bidens, then we need to build that intra-class, right? With it working a class-based challenge, not reject them because they voted for somebody we don't like. And these guys don't get it. They completely don't get it. And it pisses me off.
Get together and have a beer with these right wingers. I'm like, bro, our role is...
No, it's not the right winger. See, he's saying because you're a right winger, you're the enemy and we must destroy you. No. The people you have to destroy are the ones at the top of the tree, the vultures who are looking down for any weak person, doesn't matter what their politics are, ready to swoop down and gather up the prey. That is who we have to destroy, not victims of those vultures.
With them, it's to destroy them. And that's exactly what Chris Hedges is articulating about the Epstein class, essentially. And I think it's really important.
Right, the Epstein class, not necessarily the Republican voter, not necessarily the MAGA voter. And it's very, very unfortunate that those guys are really trying to put us in these warring camps when we should be uniting against the billionaire elites. Here's another guy who totally gets it wrong. And I'm playing clips from other podcasters. I don't usually watch Cedar, but I sort of now and then will. This is Brianna Joy Gray, one of my favorites. And here she's going to play a clip of James Carville, where he's extolling a billionaire.
The cartoon.
Who's the Democrat that you see who can carry the flag into 2028? Kamala Harris?
No.
AOC?
No.
Rahm Emanuel?
To win the Democratic nomination, you have to ask yourself two really important questions. One, can you raise...
I'm going to stop it there. The questions Carville wants you to ask are questions that will lead to the answer he wants you to give. And that means we don't focus on policy. We don't focus on record. We don't focus on whether you have a proven history of fighting for poor, struggling, working people. No. It's just about money. And the way he frames it, I think, get over on black people. That's what he's saying. Can we fool black people at a fish fry or at a church into believing we're on their side? And can we raise many millions of dollars? It's not about whether we really are on the side of African Americans, of poor, struggling, and working class Americans. No, that's irrelevant to Jim Carville. And so that would lead to the answer he wants, which is somebody who's going to keep his taxes low, who's going to keep a stratified, hierarchical society. His answer's really embarrassingly bad. But let's
early money. The second question you have to ask yourself, who can walk into a black fish fry in South Carolina, a black church? Now, they can be nice. They're very polite people.
Yeah.
But who is going to get them to hum and sway? If I had to say one guy, if I were like betting...
But it was very condescending also. Very polite people. What the hell are you talking about? Like describing this group. Hum and sway. You get people to vote for you because you're able to articulate for them a better future for them. You're able to say, hey, this is what I'm going to do to make your life a little bit better, to address the challenges that you face every day. That's the answer, Jim Carville. But of course, it's not the answer that he wants anyone to come up with, because the people, the candidates who would make, and that's, by the way, how Barack Obama won. He was the more progressive candidate in 2008. He did articulate a government that was going to fight for poor, struggling, and working people. That's why he was able to win South Carolina. That's why he was able to win Iowa. Because people heard what he had to say. Now, he was kind of a cipher. People projected onto him what they wanted to believe to a degree. But remember, he did say he was going to fight for a public option. He did say he supported that. He had talked often about inequality. He had said that one of the biggest challenges we face as a nation is inequality. And then he made it worse in a lot of ways. But President Obama did win because, and it was, he had been against the Iraq War. He was able to portray Hillary correctly, accurately as the warmonger. He had been the one who was against that war. He had more progressive cred. And he won. He won the Democratic primary. Bernie Sanders came out of nowhere. He was so close. He probably could have beaten Hillary if he had simply gone after her for her crooked email server nonsense shenanigans. But, the entire Democratic establishment managed to take him down. He still probably could have won if he had run a better race, I believe. But James Carville doesn't want you to ever think that pro-worker policy is what wins elections. He doesn't ever want you to believe that or recognize that or think that. So instead, he's going to say, well, what we need is somebody who's going to raise a lot of money and somebody who can, and I don't even know where he's really going with that, the black voter thing. I guess he's saying it's not going to be Pete Buttigieg. Yes, the African-American vote is very important in the Democratic Party, but we've already seen it's not enough to win elections. You have to, like Obama, reach a larger swath of the population.
The Kentucky Derby, and I saw this 12-1 horse, and I said, yeah, I want to get a price. I'd take J.B. Pritzker.
Really? Why?
Well,
not Kamala Harris? She's black.
She has no chance.
Why not?
Because no Democrat wants anything to do with anybody that had anything to do with 2024.
But I do think Kamala Harris has a real chance to get the Democratic nomination. I don't think she would be a good choice against J.B. Pritzker. I mean, I don't think Kamala Harris would be a good choice against J.D. Vance, right? J.D. Vance, J.B. Pritzker. Let's see if I can get that right. No, I don't think Kamala Harris would win against J.D. Vance. Do I think J.B. Pritzker would defeat J.D. Vance? I think he would have a chance against Vance. But I don't think he'd be a particularly compelling character. I don't think he's somebody who's going to excite the base in any way. He's not going to get people to sway and hum. You want to get people excited to the point where they're actually singing, chanting? You got to not just promise them. You got to do more than just talk the talk. You've got to be able to demonstrate a history of championing the concerns of the people championing the people you're talking to. I don't think this guy meets that. Now, is he the worst? No. But this, right here, this is why he's not a good choice.
Donald Trump thinks that we should trust him on the economy because he claims to be very rich. But take it from an actual billionaire. Trump.
Yeah, so let's get the rest of it. Take it from an actual billionaire.
Donald Trump thinks that we should trust him on the economy because he claims to be very rich. But take it from an actual billionaire. Trump is rich in only one thing: stupidity.
Bragging about all the money that you inherited is not a ticket to the White House. Just isn't. There's no way that, especially as a Democrat, the problem is the J.B. Pritzkers. The problem is concentrated wealth. Now, does that mean I would never vote for J.B. Pritzker? No, but I want him to say, hey, I shouldn't exist, right? I have billions. I'm not, I take it from an actual billionaire. I got it. I got mine. That's what he's saying. You can hear it clear as a bell. He's not saying I shouldn't have this. I didn't earn it. I actually inherited it. And I went into private myself. I think he started some private equity company. And we have hotel chains, which means that there aren't a lot of small independent hotels and motels all over the country now. There's just a handful that control the entire market. We have tremendous amount of price control. We can overcharge. We have a bunch of cookie cutter, ugly hotels everywhere because they're cheaper to construct, but they, also ruin your sight lines when you go to visit a city. You could say that, and you could say, and I'm going to fight against it. Then I would be like, okay, well, maybe I'd vote for you. I'm going to raise my taxes to the point where I wouldn't exist as a billionaire. And Pritzker, he has a little progressive cred. He did call for a wealth to have a graduated income tax in Illinois instead of a flat tax. They have a flat tax on income there. He said, no, the richest, the people with the highest income should pay more. And he did support the initiative, which failed, to repeal the constitutional amendment that says there's a flat tax on income in Illinois. So he's not the worst. He did raise the minimum wage. But ultimately, he is just simply trying to sand off the roughest edges of a predatory, unjust system. He's not trying to say, okay, capitalism does create wealth. Capitalism doesn't create wealth. People create wealth. But in a capitalist economy, because of reliance on markets and investor capital and the like, we sometimes do see advances that do lead to benefits for large numbers of people. It's not completely, capitalism isn't completely antithetical to improved well-being for the masses. It isn't completely consistent with it either, and we have to tame it, we have to control it. And the most important thing we have to do is make sure no one has too much and everyone has enough. But that's not Pritzker's priority. So he's the wrong choice. The problem is the Democrats don't have anybody. And it's so important that we get this right that I keep telling you, got to be agreeing. You'll never find a Democrat. There's not one good Democrat out there whose name is on the ballot or whose name is likely to be on the ballot. Kamala Harris, I saw the latest polling, several polls all say she is easily the front runner for the nomination in 28. Well, it's amazing that you would, wow. I don't know what you do with that. But the idea that the Democrats are just going to say, yeah, let's have Kamala Harris, not come up with someone, because she could lose, she probably would lose the primary. But if the Democrats, if the leadership of the party, I guess it's Obama, I don't even know, Schumer, Jeffries, they'll never, change because they profit from the system. But if they really truly prioritized winning, really truly prioritize the best interest of the American public, they would champion real wealth and income redistribution. They would champion peace. They would champion environmental justice and environmental policies as a direct refutation of Trump. They don't do that. Who cares, right? Then I say, who cares? Just like Hassan Piker. He said, I'm not going to vote for Gavin Newsom. He's getting canceled for it, supposedly. He said that we have to let Democratic elites know, if you give us the same old, you're going to lose again. The only way you can win is if you do what we tell you. They still won't do what we tell them, but at least they'll know. And at least then we can make an informed decision to go in a very different direction. All right, that's going to do it for me. I hope you have a great weekend. I'll be back Monday, hoping it's a Carlos Monday. Thank you so much for being part of Halitics. Enjoy your afternoon.